She was the original fitness celebrity. She yanked an obscure, previously unknown sport out of the shadows and away from the fringes and made it mainstream. She was an incredibly gifted athlete who, before she was 21 years old, launched a comeback from her deathbed that would shatter records and turn her into one of the most recognizable figures of the 80s and 90s. We will dig deep into her life to discover new secrets, controversies, and untold stories. Cory Everson, a lifetime of shaping bodies and the golden era of women's bodybuilding. Corina Neuer was born January 4th, 1958 in Racine, Wisconsin. Cory's parents were German and both were athletic. Cory's mom was a talented track athlete in Germany, and Cory has speculated in interviews that she might have been in the Olympics if war had not broken out. Cory's father was a chemical engineer who worked as a beer brewmeister in Germany as well as when they moved to America. Cory was the middle child, with a younger sister Cameo and an older sister Charmaine. She grew up in Deerfield, Illinois in the Riverwoods suburb. Cory's mom was very strong both physically and in personality, and she made quite a mark on her 3 children. Cory remembers seeing her sweeping around the house and tipping up the heavy kitchen table with one hand to clean underneath it. Cory and her sisters were raised to believe women could do anything and never thought of themselves as dainty little things that were supposed to just look pretty and not sweat. Although she says she never considered herself to be a particularly gifted athlete, Cory's work ethic and determination were evident from an early age. She started competing in sports by the time she was 8 years old, and by the time she was in Deerfield High School, she was a 4-sport athlete: gymnastics, track and field, swimming, and badminton. Although she clearly possesses a tough-as-nails physicality, Cory has also always been artistic and creative. This duality is never more apparent than in her college years. She attended University of Wisconsin, where she studied art and received a degree in interior design. In college, Cory was incredibly successful in both athletics and sports. Her tendencies towards perfectionism and a strong work ethic led to nearly straight A's and not 1 or 2, but 4 Big Ten championships in the pentathlon. She stumbled across one of her old medals from her college championship in 1978 and posted this photo on her social media not too long ago. The pentathlon is a track and field competition featuring 5 events. It is an ancient sport going all the way back to ancient Greece and the original Olympic Games in 776 BC. The events Cory competed in were high jump, shot put, long jump, the half-mile run, and hurdles. To compete at a high level in so many different events requires incredible athleticism. Cory's parents certainly passed on some great genes for this, and Cory wasn't the only recipient. She has said in interviews that her younger sister Cameo is a much better and an entirely fearless athlete. These diverse athletics build a very strong base of muscularity and physicality for Cory, which certainly set her up to succeed in her subsequent competitive bodybuilding efforts. She had developed practically every muscle in her body from the time she was 8 years old. There were 2 different events that happened to her in her early 20s that changed Cory's life forever. The first was meeting Jeff Everson. Jeff was a strength and conditioning coach at University of Wisconsin. He had an undergrad degree in English, a master's in physical therapy, and a PhD in exercise physiology. In a time when weightlifting was mainly an activity for men, Cory and several of her friends from the university track team wandered into the weight room and began working with weights in an attempt to improve their strength and become more competitive. Jeff had trained a female named Cam Jacobson in the deadlift, and she had subsequently become a world record holder. Jeff was born in 1951, so he was 7 years older than Cory. Their coach-athlete relationship quickly blossomed into a romantic one. Jeff and Cory would eventually marry, then divorce, but they remained close until his death in 2019 at the age of 67. Cory has said one of the biggest obstacles to her success was her self-confidence. Jeff helped her grow beyond that limitation, training her body in the weight room and helping her mature and become more confident in both life and in sports. Jeff was able to convince her to compete in her first bodybuilding contest, the Miss Midwest in Rockford, Illinois in 1981. Tina Plackinger, who was Miss Central Wisconsin at the time, also competed in the contest. Valerie Wooten placed 3rd, Carrie Guide placed 2nd, and Cory placed 1st. She did not train very much for that competition, outside of what she had been doing for the pentathlon training. She did not really know how to pose, so she winged it, incorporating a certain amount of gymnastics. Cory stands around 5 foot 9 inches tall, and at the time she was around 145 pounds and very lean. The first Miss Olympia contest had been held in 1980, so women's bodybuilding was just getting off the ground. Cory was just graduating from college and wanted to do something fun with her life, but never dreamed bodybuilding would present her with a 10-year-long career opportunity or a lifetime of promoting fitness. She entered the 1981 Miss Central USA next. She won that contest too, and when the promoter, Warren Langman, presented her with the trophy, she grabbed him and picked him up off the ground in celebration. Like meeting Jeff, there was a second event that changed the course of her life. Shortly after graduating from college, around 1981 or 1982, Cory ended up in the hospital with a very serious, if not life-threatening, medical problem. At the time, she was working as an interior designer in Chicago, and she and Jeff were supposed to compete in a couples bodybuilding show that weekend. She had begun to experience some sharp pains in her leg and groin. As it became more and more painful and uncomfortable, she went to the OBGYN to get checked out. The doctor gave her a clean bill of health. But a few days later, she woke up and her leg was swollen twice its normal size. She landed in the intensive care unit at the local hospital, where it was discovered she had a blood clot in her leg. It cut off almost all of her circulation, and as the hours and days passed, the risks to her health were increasing. At the time, the medical treatment for such an issue was limited, and they were considering amputating her leg to save her life. A young doctor there put her on a medicine called streptokinase that was not widely used at the time. It helped break down the blood clot, and Cory then spent 10 weeks in the ICU and another 4 weeks in critical care. She then began physical therapy so she could learn to walk again. When she left the hospital, she was told she would never compete again and might have trouble walking normally for the rest of her life. Of course, she was able to prove them wrong. Always a hard worker and incredibly dedicated, Cory took her new lease on life as a mandate to perform and excel. No one would outwork her. After 12 weeks of therapy, she returned to the weight room. And beyond her aspirations to succeed, she was also determined to always help people. She has said in interviews that she perpetually roots for the underdog. With a new lease on life, she was determined to give back to those in need. Later in Cory's life, when her mother turned 50, she also got a blood clot. This led to questions, and they eventually discovered an inherited blood disorder that was causing the issue. It is more prevalent in people of German descent. Cory eventually went on a prescription anticoagulant to help reduce the risks of further complications. Cory began to compete more often, both individually as well as with Jeff. They married in 1982, the same year that she won the North American Championships. When women's bodybuilding initially began, it was wildly popular and grew quickly because the women's physiques were smaller and more achievable than today. In 1984, Cory went on to win the NPC Nationals, which allowed her to turn pro and qualified her for the Miss Olympia contest. Cory has said that with her personality, it can be hard for her to make decisions. "I have to see all of my options first," she says. "I still overanalyze almost everything. My husband jokes about it. After 2 years, I still haven't decided what color to paint my house. I don't do a ton of things, but the ones I do, I try to do well. Mediocrity is unacceptable." That was the case for her competing in the 1984 Miss Olympia contest. She wasn't sure if she was ready and considered waiting until the following year. On top of that uncertainty, Joe Weider, one of the most famous promoters of bodybuilding contests, called her up and asked her not to compete. She ended up borrowing one of Rachel McLish's posing suits and entering the contest. One of the judges did not even have her in the top 10, but as the competition progressed, it became apparent that she would place near the top. She ended up winning the contest. This was really the beginning of her professional career as a bodybuilder. And she kept winning year after year, every year. She clinched 6 consecutive Miss Olympia titles from 1984 to 1989, an incredible feat. In those days, the women's prize money was embarrassingly small, but Cory and Jeff discovered she could make a living guest posing and talking at seminars. She began traveling extensively, guest posing practically every weekend. She felt mounting pressure to be in tip-top shape. She couldn't bear the thought that she would show up to a guest posing event looking chunky or out of shape. She trained 6 days a week, often swimming or hiking on her day off. Her work in the weight room was unheard of and relentless, often encompassing a 2-hour workout in the morning, followed by a different and additional 2-hour workout in the afternoon. Cory was incredibly popular. She was determined to be the best ambassador for the sport she could possibly be. She always had a smile on her face. She would never turn away a fan, allowing them to interrupt her workouts, her vacations, or her personal time with her family to get an autograph or take a photo with her. But like any athlete at the top of their sport, a target was on her back. Especially in a sport that emphasizes the aesthetic like bodybuilding, some people were constantly looking at her physique and picking it apart, looking for flaws and imperfections. This was a lot of stress for her. She basically never took any time off from the time she was in her early 20s until she retired from competition at 32 years old. The complete list of her competitions and her overall track record is incredible. It speaks to her hard work, her consistency, and also to her genetics. She was relatively tall with a little waist and broad shoulders. And of course it didn't hurt that she was beautiful with high, prominent cheekbones and exotic eyes. She has claimed in interviews that she didn't change much year over year, but I certainly beg to differ. Her physique improved drastically, growing more dense, muscular, and defined. As the women's sport matured and expanded, all of the women's physiques changed. Cory's competitors were bigger and more muscular every year, stirring up controversy about reported performance-enhancing drugs, the ideal female physique, and the future of the sport. After the 1989 Olympia, when Cory almost lost to an incredibly muscular Sandy Rydell, with thoughts of reducing her 4+ hour daily commitment in the gym, taking on other career challenges, and maybe starting a family with Jeff, she retired from competition. She guest posed at the first Arnold Classic bodybuilding competition in 1989 with a broken foot. You can just see it was taped up in some of the footage from that show. It was a stress fracture, and after the show she had to have it repaired and set in a cast. Cory was the original instructor and the producer of the show Body Shaping on ESPN. The very first episode aired in 1988. Although she's had plenty of practice by now, at the time Cory was a nervous public speaker. She was scared when she first began talking with ESPN about the show. It was generally shot on location at various outdoor workout facilities. Cory and other fitness gurus would lead viewers through workouts and provide fitness and nutritional advice and encouragement. From 1993 until 2000, Cory also hosted a similar program on ESPN2 called Cory Everson's Gotta Sweat. It ran for 7 years and was quite popular. The original cast of Gotta Sweat included Cory, her sister Cameo, Kathy Boyd, and Tony Shamir. For the initial airing, they shot 65 shows in just 21 days, a brutal but efficient production schedule. Although Cory did not consider herself an actress, she enjoyed taking advantage of acting opportunities as they popped up. She never had an acting agent. In 1986, she had a part in the movie The Morning After. In 1989, she played a guard in the movie The Girlfriend from Outer Space. In 1991, she had a significant role in a movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme called Double Impact. Cory claimed that she saw Jean-Claude in the gym one day and he told her about the upcoming movie and how she should play one of the characters. She never tried out for the role. Basically, she knew the right people and the next thing you knew, she was in a movie. In 1993, she was in a couple of episodes of the TV show The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr. In 1994, she had a bit part in the movie Natural Born Killers. She was in one episode of Lois and Clark in 1994, and she was in the movie Felony. She was also in one episode of Renegade. In 1995, she was in the movie Ballistic. Her 1996 credits included one episode of Good Behavior, the TV movie Tarzan, and 2 episodes of a Tarzan TV series. In 1997, she was in the movie Sacred Trust, as well as one episode of Home Improvement with Tim Allen. From 1995 to 1998, she was in 3 different episodes of the TV series Hercules, where she played Atlanta. In 1999, she played a bit part in the movie My Favorite Martian. And 6 years later, in 2005, she was in an episode of the TV series Charmed. Cory published 4 books during her career. The first, in 1987, was called Superflex, Miss Olympia's Guide to Building a Strong and Sexy Body. In 1991, she published Cory Everson's Workout. In 1994, she published Cory Everson's Fat, Free, and Fit. And finally, in 1998, she published Cory Everson's Life Balance. She also stayed busy running a clothing company called Samson and Delilah with her husband Jeff. In 1992, after being together for 12 years and married for 10, Cory and Jeff separated. Cory met a man named Steve Dania in 1992. He refused to date her until she was emotionally healed from her divorce. Steve was a dentist, but in some ways, he was a show business dentist. His work was featured on the TV series Extreme Makeover. In 1993, Cory and Jeff divorced. In 1995, at the age of 37, Cory experienced another blood clot. It was still a serious health risk, but due to her conditioning and advances in medical science, she suffered less of a setback than the event 17 years earlier. Steve and Cory married in 1998 in an unusual double wedding with her sister Cameo and her husband, Randy Bernard. It is clear that Cory always wanted to be a mom. That had weighed heavily in her decision to retire from competitive bodybuilding. Because of her medical condition with blood clots, she could not bear children of her own. She endured 2 frustrating attempts at surrogacy. In one case, the surrogate mother developed uterine cancer. In the other case, the surrogate mom made the decision to keep the baby herself. Finally, Cory and Steve adopted their first child from Russia in 2000 and their second in 2003. Cory has remained an outspoken advocate for adoption and has helped guide some of her friends or acquaintances through the process since she and Steve completed it. In 2014, she received the Arnold Schwarzenegger Lifetime Achievement Award. Cory's ex-husband Jeff died suddenly at the age of 68 in 2019. It was clear that his passing affected Cory deeply, as she and Jeff had remained close despite their divorce. In 2023, she won the Muscle Beach Hall of Fame Award. In 2024, she received the Deerfield High School Hall of Fame Award. In March of 2024, she was wishing her daughter Nina a happy 26th birthday. Then, in October of 2024, we saw her wish her son Boris a happy 27th birthday. Boris is a firefighter in the same area of California where Cory lives. Cory is far from the limelight these days, but she stays busy and she is never hard to find. She posts frequently on social media and is beloved by fans even now, decades after retiring. Cory's natural beauty, and of course her physique, left an indelible mark on the sport of women's bodybuilding. But it was her personality, her work ethic, her incredible dedication and success at being an ambassador of women's fitness that cemented her legacy. She was truly the original fitness celebrity.